This is the video you send to your friend who doesn't like XRP and says that you're crazy for thinking XRP can go to some of these higher prices. We have math-based evidence that shows what happened with Bitcoin and the inflows that came into Bitcoin after its ETFs went live. And we're going to compare that to see what would happen if we got something similar for XRP. This is based on math. This is for educational purposes only, and I'm not here to give anybody financial advice. Right on into the data, folks. Let's get it. So what I did is I finally was able to tally up the 62 billion of inflows that we saw come into Bitcoin. And that accounts, by the way, for the outflows from the ETFs as well, too. We had a cumulative 62.25 billion of inflows into Bitcoin ETFs from January 11, 2024, when they went live, up until October 10th, 2025, when the Bitcoin market basically topped out. Now, I took that same time period and I went and looked at the centralized exchange flows. And what I observed was a lot of money flowing out. And so I tallied that up, had a little bit of help from Grok, and boy, does AI make all of this research so much more easy to conduct and to, really prepare to present. And so I'm just going to show that to you guys. We're going to run through a few scenarios for XRP, but let me know what you guys think in the comments down below about these scenarios for XRP. We're going to CoinGlass to get the centralized exchange flows, and you can see in the last couple days or earlier, these are actually weekly flows. You got 2.17 billion flowing out of Bitcoin in the week that ended November 16th. The week that ended November 9th, you have 2.73 billion. But for this sample, we are actually just going from the launch day of the ETFs, January 11th, all the way up till the October 10th peak. Now, sliding on over here, this is the chart from Bloomberg Intelligence on the ETF flows. So you can see you're looking from inception. It took a couple months to get 12 billion of inflows. By March 18th, we had 12 billion of inflows. By August of that year, you had 18 billion. And then in February of 2025, this year, you reached 40 billion. Now, you did have some money flow out into the April tariff debacle, right? And so it dropped back down, but then it ended up peaking out at about 62.25 billion. Okay. And so what I did is I took the chart from CoinGlass that has all the centralized flows, plugged it into Grok, and I had Grok tally it up for me. Instead of having to take all the time to manually tally it up and do the math, Grok saved me some time and helped me out. And I double checked it and triple checked it and really dialed this thing in. And here's the results. The final verified numbers from January 1st, 2024 through October 12th, 2025. We saw 24.31 billion flow out of Bitcoin during this time. And I want to note, this is not Bitcoin being removed from exchanges to go to cold storage. This is Bitcoin to US dollars or Tether or to some other currency. This is money flowing out of Bitcoin into something else. And that total tally was 24.31 billion. If you look in 2024, there was nearly 13 billion of outflows. From January 1st to October 12th, 2025, there was 11.4 billion of outflows, bringing our total to 24.31 billion of outflows from Bitcoin since the ETFs went live. And this is something that I noted and I knew just by looking at the chart on CoinGlass, I could see, wow, this thing's just red line after red line after red line. That's all, weekly outflows out of Bitcoin. And I was, dragging my feet, procrastinating because I didn't want to have to go through and manually tally it up. So huge shout out to Grok for being able to summarize this data for me. And what it shows us is that the ETF saved Bitcoin. If it wasn't for the 62 billion that flew into Bitcoin ETFs, I don't know if Bitcoin would have broke 100,000 this cycle. In fact, I don't even know if it would have gone to a new all-time high. This is just what the data is reflecting, is that all this new money coming in through the Bitcoin ETFs was being used by other people to sell off on the centralized exchanges. During the time period that the ETFs have been live, it has been consistent outflows from Bitcoin. The suits, Wall Street, saved Bitcoin. Now, what we do here to tally this up and get our market cap multiplier is we go And what I did is I subtracted 62.25 billion minus 24.31 billion, because the 62 billion is the ETF inflows, but we had 24 billion of outflows from the centralized exchanges. This gives us a 37,940,000,000 inflow number. So that's the total number that came into Bitcoin from a net flow standpoint. Adding in the inflows from the ETFs, subtracting the outflows from the centralized exchanges, 37,940,000,000. That's how much money came in. And then we slide on over and we take a look here at the Bitcoin market cap chart. Bitcoin's market cap grew all the way from, and I actually measured from the low after the ETFs went live. There was a sell the news pullback, right? And the Bitcoin price market cap went down to 756 billion. And then it's grown all the way up to about 2.5 trillion is where it topped out October 6th, 2025. That is a growth of 1.76 trillion. You can see that number right up here, 1.76 T. That's 1.76 trillion. And by the way, we should note that if you bought that pullback after the ETFs went live, that sell the news pullback on Bitcoin, you rode up Bitcoin over 230% during that time period. But the market cap grew by 1.76 trillion. We take that number and we slide over and we're going to divide that by the amount of inflows that we saw. So that would be 1.76 trillion divided by 37.94 billion, giving us a market cap multiplier of 46. Now, if you were to just look at the ETF inflows, the multiplier on that would only be 28. But the multiplier during this time is actually a little bit better, considering the fact that you had only 37.94 of net inflows if you subtract the outflows that we saw in the centralized exchanges. So we have a 46x market cap multiplier for Bitcoin during the time period of the ETFs going live in January 2024 until we peaked out in the beginning of October 2025. 46x multiplier. That's just math. Nobody can refute that, right? That's just math. Now we look at XRP. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be watching what happens on the centralized exchanges by going to CoinGlass. And this is the spot inflow outflow chart on XRP. Same one that I was looking at for Bitcoin. And you can even see here that this past week, November 16th, 2025, we actually saw 456 million flow out of XRP. Far less than the couple billion that is flowing out from Bitcoin during that same time period. So we're dealing with much smaller numbers, much smaller market cap, and that's why it's so much easier to move XRP and why we observe such a higher market cap multiplier on XRP. And so what I did is I went to Grok and I had Grok create 3 different scenarios for me of XRP seeing a 50x, 100x, and a 200x market cap multiplier on a range of inflows from 5 billion to 50 billion. Now, real quick, let's go back here to the Bitcoin ETF inflows so we can show you how long it took for Bitcoin ETFs to see the same amount of inflows. So going back here, this is the chart from Bloomberg Intelligence. You can see it only took 2 months, March 18, 2024, for 12 billion to come in. It only took 8 months for us to cross over about 18 billion. And then in 1 year, we crossed over 40.25 billion. 1 year, 9 months later, Bitcoin ETFs see 62 billion of inflows. So what we're looking at here is Bitcoin did 62 billion of inflows in about 1 year, 9 months. Now, when you include the centralized exchange outflows, it was only about 37 billion. Okay? So we take that and we see that, okay, it was possible for Bitcoin. Can XRP do something similar? And this is where I say, even if it doesn't happen in a year or two, give us 5 years time frame, you're going to see tens of billions coming into XRP eventually. Now, it could happen sooner. I'll leave that up to you guys as far as the timeline goes. But I had Grok separate the original table into 3 separate tables, one for each of the 50x, 100x, and 200x market cap multiplier scenarios. Include the XRP price in the column as well. And so As of yesterday, the price of XRP was $1.95. Circulating supply was 60.25 billion. And the market cap was 117.5 billion. And so you see here on the left side, we have the inflows at 5 billion of inflows times 50x multiplier. You get 250 billion of market cap growth. That's a $6 XRP. So we could be up to $6 here if we get, it took 2 months for Bitcoin to see, what was that, 8 billion? Let me slide back over. 12 billion. It took Bitcoin 2 months to see 12 billion. So back over here, in a couple months, if we saw 10 billion flow into XRP, times that 50x multiplier, that's a $10 XRP. Remember, this is the 50x multiplier, our base case scenario. Very conservative. Now let's scroll down. 50 billion of inflows times a 50x multiplier. You're at a $43 XRP. This is just a scenario. 100x. 5 billion of inflows, you're at a $10 XRP. 20 billion of inflows, you're at $35 XRP. 50 billion of inflows times a 100x multiplier, your market cap would grow by 5 trillion. You're at an $84 XRP. Now, once again, before we get to the most bullish scenario, remember, Bitcoin's already done this in 1 year, 9 months. 50 billion of net inflows, right? So we're not talking about anything that Bitcoin hasn't already achieved and already done. And I know that some people say, well, Bitcoin will do it, XRP won't because XRP sucks. Okay, you feel free to comment that down below if that's you. But I think the majority in our community recognize that XRP definitely is going to surprise some folks. 200x multiplier scenario. Now, this is what we've been observing on the XRP market cap multiplier on a regular basis, has been 200, 300, 400, 500x. During the liquidation event of 1010, during that time period, we actually saw and observed a market cap multiplier on XRP of 1200x. Now, that's a very extreme example during one of the most, literally the most volatile time in crypto's history, the biggest liquidation event we've ever gone through. But it shows you that this range on the market cap multiplier for XRP on a regular basis is between 100 and 200x. And very consistently, we're tracking it between 200 and 500x. So the 200x example is really not that far out there, in my opinion. We're observing it on a regular basis. This isn't even my opinion. It's just data that we're observing right now. So 200x on 5 billion of inflows takes us to an $18 XRP. 10 billion of inflows, that's a $35 XRP. 20 billion of inflows on a 200x multiplier, you're at a $68 XRP. At 30 billion of inflows, market cap would grow by 6 trillion on a 200x multiplier. That's a 101 XRP. $101 XRP scenario. Let's go most bullish. 50 billion of inflows times a 200x multiplier. That's 10 trillion of market cap growth. $167.88 XRP. Once again, these are just scenarios. We're just looking at data and potential scenarios. If you think the odds of this happening are 0%, let us know in the comments down below. If you think that I'm being too bearish and that we should run through some scenarios that are a little bit more bullish and aggressive, we could do that too, maybe in a separate video. I just want to let the math speak for itself. And like I said, this is the video to send and share around to all your friends, family, and loved ones that think you're crazy for thinking that XRP could even go to 10 or 20 bucks, right? I'm not making any claims in this video other than to say we are observing this data with Bitcoin. It's already been done. We're observing these market cap multipliers on XRP ranging from 100 to 300x on a regular basis. And we have conservative on the inflows of 4 to 8 billion first year from JP Morgan, of Canary Capital CEO saying we could see 5 to 10 billion in the first month or so. So once again, conservative assumptions, simple math. Please help us out by sharing it out far and wide. I hope you appreciate the content, and if you do, make sure you like this video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our updates. And all of our community resources are available at zachrector.com. Thank you, and God bless you all. I am your host, Zach Rector. I really appreciate all of the love and support. If you want to support the channel, just remember that you can start by smashing that thumbs up for me, sharing this content far and wide, and everything else is at my website.